There's three things I'd like to just touch upon, then I will open it up for questions. First is, as you probably know, it's been going on for a couple of years, the Chesapeake lawsuit that Pennsylvania Farm Bureau and American Farm Bureau are engaged in. It's very timely because today we're in front of the Third Circuit Court in Philadelphia, and we are going to be allowed to offer oral arguments today. So that's the stage that lawsuit is. But let me back up a little bit and just tell you the reason for the lawsuit. EPA decided that they need to come up with the guidelines to clean up the Chesapeake Bay and implement them. So they developed a model, and first the formula they used to develop a model was so flawed that we appealed to them to redo the model. And their answer was, well, you know, we spent so much money on it, we're going to have to use it. Their model says in Pennsylvania there's no tilling going on. Well, the truth of the matter is there's about 90% of the state, we farmers have no-till now. And I said to EPA in testifying, you know, I said, we don't disagree with you on wanting to clean up waters of the United States, i.e. the Chesapeake Bay. What we disagree on is the timeline it's going to take to get there. If you think about over the last 20, 30 years, the improvements that have been made to waters. Everybody says, well, the Susquehanna is the main flow tributary to the bay. Well, I lived right along the Susquehanna River all my life, over 60 years. You didn't hear that, but. And I can remember as a kid going down along that river, and the rocks were fluorescent orange along the bank. There was stuff floating in that river that I would not even want to try to identify. And there wasn't any fish. Today I can see the bottom of that river. It's one of the best smallmouth bass fisheries in the world. So that's how we have progressed. And how have we done that? Not only with our municipalities coming up as technology improved, but agriculture. You know, technology has improved. Over just 20 years ago, they would have been right. There wouldn't have been any no-tilling because there wasn't the equipment and the technology to do no-tilling. Today, as our land-grant universities have developed technology, farmers have adopted it, and they've really taken it and run with it to the point where, as I said, there's probably 90% no-tilling now done. The other best management practices, as they become available to us, we have adopted them and used them. So for somebody to try to say we're not willing to clean up the water, that's just wrong. We disagree on the timeline. You know, they're saying it took 200 years for the bay to get this way. I don't know how they expect us in 5 years to turn that around. The truth of the matter is all the results out of DEP, the water testing, everything like that, shows there has been remarkably steady improvement. And we will continue on that path. Like I said, as technology becomes available, farmers will adopt it. I will also say our biggest concern is with the Chesapeake Bay, EPA does have the right to say this is what needs to be done. What they do not have the right is to say how a state is going to do that. The Clean Water Act forbids that. The Clean Water Act says the responsibility of the waters in a state shall be the state's responsibility. But the Chesapeake Bay lawsuit, we're contending, EPA is dictating to the state on how they're going to implement this. EPA's own numbers right now say that to meet these guidelines, the numbers they have put out, the metrics they have put out, we would have to idle 600,000 acres of farmland. Now, that's turn it to grasslands or forest. That's totally impractical. It would kill the industry. We just can't do that. We need some common sense approaches. This is nothing but another end run on the Clean Water Act. And so we have decided to take it to court. And the first round was in Pennsylvania court. We didn't get a favorable outcome, and it was basically knowledgeable that the judge basically said this is a very complex issue. I don't understand it. I'm going to have to rely on the federal government. Well, we are not going to rely on the federal government. We're going to rely on the court system, and we're going to pursue it till we get an outcome that will save agriculture in Pennsylvania. So that's number one. Number two is another end run on the Clean Water Act, and that is, you've heard of it as WOTUS. It's Waters of the United States. It's a rule that EPA has put out along with the Army Corps of Engineers stating that any water that reaches a tributary, that reaches a navigable water source, which is what they're only supposed to control, is navigable water under the Clean Water Act. But now they're stretching it to say any water that has the potential to reach that navigable water, we are going to control. Let me give you an example. In the spring, if we get a 3-inch rain, you know, the ground just can't absorb it quick enough, so surface water runs off. Wherever that water runs off through a field as an infernal stream, it'll be maybe a one-time thing, and 2 days later it's gone. EPA is saying wherever that water has run, that is now waters of the United States. Even if it's dry land for another couple of years, they're still saying that is waters of the United States. So what does that mean? There already is rules in place, for instance, that you dare not spray over waters of the United States. So if you have flow down through the middle of a field one time, to be able to spray through that spot in the field, you're going to be required to get an NPDES permit, a National Pollutant Discharge Permit. They're very expensive to get, they're very expensive to maintain, and you have to renew them every 5 years. If you do not get that permit, EPA can come in and fine you $37,000 per day. Here's another ironic twist. All the best management practices we have done over the years, and I'm talking about things called diversion ditches, which are sod barriers put in a field to stop the flow of water and let it run out to a sod waterway. We put sod waterways in, it's to stop erosion, stop sediment from leaving the farm, terraces, all these best management practices that farmers have voluntarily done to be good stewards of the land now have become waters of the United States. And in the case of terraces, they're made to farm over the terrace. Well, there again, you're not allowed to farm over waters of the United States. So this becomes very detrimental to agriculture, very detrimental. I will also say, we're not alone in this. And we hope, and we were seeing that township supervisors, people like that, builders are waking up to this, because road ditches are now waters of the United States. Our lawyer at American Farm Bureau says that if you mow that road ditch and don't pick up the grass clippings, those clippings now have become a point source discharge. You have to get an NPDES permit. This is going to drive up the cost for our local municipalities, our local townships, and to be honest with you, think about it. What change is this going to make to the environment to get a permit? You're still going to mow the ditch. You're still going to farm through the field. What change is this going to make except you're now opened up for civil suits and things like that. This is very disruptive. Last thing I want to mention is we just went through a change in administration. January we'll have a new governor. Pennsylvania Farm Bureau is actively looking forward to working with the new administration on what we can do to engage the governor in agriculture, which is the #1 industry in the state. I wholeheartedly hope that he thinks the #1 industry in the state, the economic engine that's driving us, and sometimes we've had some rough times in the state, we still are suffering, but I don't think you want to bring down that engine any further. I think you'd want to try to fuel it that it keeps going to help the state.